Paul here from My Perfect Failure, helping you turn your failures into successes and your setbacks into opportunities. If you knew the exact 4 steps to take to instantly to manage stress, anxiety and self-doubt, would you use them? That's what we're diving into today with Dr. Mary Poffenroth, a biopsychologist and courage expert whose work from neurohacking has been featured in Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, to name a few. Mary is here to share her proven RAIN method, a simple tool you can use daily to transform everyday worries and stresses into real opportunities. We'll cover the science of fear, of failure, and the practical strategies for building real, lasting courage. So if you're ready to stop stressing and start thriving, hit play wherever you get your podcast.
Who knows what Jay-Z, J.K. Rowling, Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey all have in common? Okay, I will tell you then. They have all overcome failure in one shape or form to go on to gain success in their respective careers. Welcome to My Perfect Failure. Join us as we delve into the world of our perfect failures. We will interview, explore, and discuss how our perfect failures can lead us to success. Join us and tune in.
Welcome everybody to another episode of My Perfect Failure. Today I'm super duper excited because I have another amazing guest for you. So my guest today is a scientist, fear, courage researcher and biology lecturer at San Jose State University. From being adopted at birth to being the first and only family member to attend college, to her first day at NASA and beyond, which is phenomenal. She has dedicated her life to understanding how best to do scary things. Her work has been featured in publications such as Forbes, Time, Science, TED, Entrepreneur, and National Geographic. She has 3 master's degrees in biology, psychology, and science communication, and is a PhD in psychology. She's also the author of the groundbreaking new book, Brave New You, that explores strategies, tools, and neurohacks to live more courageously every day. So a very warm welcome to My Perfect Failure, Mary Poffenroth.
That was very close, and I would only call it because this show's called My Perfect Failure. So it's so close. It's Poffenroth.
Poffenroth.
It's very close, very close. And right, it's in actually one of those degrees. I got my master's in science communication at Imperial College London. So
wow. I think my cousin graduated with a PhD from Imperial College London in economics. I'm sure it was Imperial because me and her 2 sisters and their lovely mum, we went for the graduation. So I'm sure it was Imperial.
Beautiful. Yeah. At Royal Albert Hall, I think they usually do the graduations.
So you've got an instant connection. And
yes.
And you know what? Before we started recording, I asked you if you had any questions, and you said no, good to go. And I did have a question for you, which I forgot to ask. So that's a bit of a failure, my perfect failure.
Hey, we're here for it. Oh my gosh. I'm ready to jump into my morning. So, your afternoon, but here in Los Angeles, I've had a chaotic morning. So I'm here for all of the failures.
Busy morning.
Yes. And had to use my neurohacks that I'm going to share with your audience. A lot of times when we think about fear, and I'm a fear and courage researcher, people automatically go to this idea of either haunted houses kind of fear or running from a bear, which I have done. And that story's in the book. And we don't really think about just the normal everyday experiences that we call stress as a fear response. Because I'm just really stressed. I'm not afraid. But when it comes to your brain either has a fear arousal response, which is stress, or it doesn't. So we don't have like a stress center part of the brain, but we do have a fear center part of the brain, and that's the amygdala. And when that gets fired up, that's when we have all those either emotions or physical feelings that we call stress. And we can do something about that in the moment. And this morning, I told you over email, I knew that here in Los Angeles, it was 10 a.m. We had our session, super excited about it. And I'm an early riser. So 5 a.m., I get up, and there's this really hard to get into workout class that I go to with my friend. And it opens up a week in advance on Fridays. And if you're not there, it literally sells out like super quick. And I was up early anyway. And so I go in, I log in, I'm like, half asleep, and, click reserve for next week. Yeah, it wasn't next week. It was today. It was 8:30 today. And you get a big financial penalty if you cancel before 24 hours. And so I had just enough time to go there, like run back, get not sweaty looking to be on camera with you. And you bet I was using my neurohacks to help calm down that stress response. And though I wasn't afraid in the sense of, oh, I'm in danger, but I didn't want to let you down. I was afraid of letting you down. I was afraid of being late. I was afraid of getting on camera and looking like a sweaty hot mess. And so, that's how our brain sees it. And that kind of shift can really help us see our normal everyday stresses in a way that we can start to navigate through them instead of just kind of being overwhelmed by them.
Yeah, no, I love that story, and the email I love, by the way. So it was I don't have it now to read out to everybody. It just made me smile. And if you're a little bit late or what have it does happen. I've had scenarios where I've been actually probably meeting you beforehand would have been useful, because you do have fear, anxieties, and stress when maybe there's been confusion about an episode and
Mhm.
timings and stuff, because a lot of the conversations I have with people are in different time zones. Like you're in
Yeah.
LA and I'm in the UK, so different time zones. So definitely over the years, there has been some mix-ups. And I remember one guy actually. At the time I was working in central London, and it was a Friday like today. So I was, like at the end of, I don't know whether this is normal. I guess it is normal. As you get to the end of the week on a Friday, if that is, I guess, people's working cycle, whatever the end of the week looks like for you, whether it's Friday or another day of the week, you kind of feel quite pleased with yourself and a little bit upbeat,
Yes.
that was my emotion. And then I got an email, and the email was from a wonderful guy who's based in New York. He's a doctor like you, and he was like, "I'm excited for our podcast," and I was like, "Surely, I'm sure our episode's next week. It must be next
Yeah.
week. He must have got it wrong." So I was quite confident. Actually, I was a little bit fearful, but I thought it was 50-50. Maybe he's got it wrong, and maybe I'd got it wrong. But as soon as I checked, I realized I'd got it wrong. Actually, and
Oh, no.
it was today. And normally I don't record at work. I normally record at home. But I kind of had equipment so I could record. And but I tried to kind of do the episode next week. I said, "Can we just do it next week?" And he was, no, we can't do it next week because I'm in China. He's going to China. Literally, he's going
Oh,
to
wow.
China the next morning, and he's going to be away for, I don't know, for a period of time. And then when he got back, he was just back to back with stuff. So yeah, so I wish I knew you like 5 years ago when that happened.
Right. And that's just a normal part of life. And, part of my work is not just giving people tools that they can use in the moment to navigate through these everyday experiences, but to change the conversation that it's totally okay. It's okay to talk about these things like your show. It's in the title, my perfect failure, deciding to reframe what failure looks like. Because if you fail, that means you're trying. Right. And you never fail if you never try anything. And here in, like I originally from the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, and right now. Some people love tech, some people don't. But in Silicon Valley, there's this saying, fail fast, fail often. And I think that is just a perfect example for life, because we're going to get it wrong if we are expanding who we are, if we're trying new stuff, if we are trying to be somebody more tomorrow than we were yesterday. And we're going to fail. Like it's like if you don't fail, then you're not trying enough to be bigger than you are, because that means that you're already perfect at
Yeah.
whatever you're doing. I can put on my socks really well. I've been putting on my socks by myself for I don't know 44 years at this point. So I don't feel that I generally fail at putting my socks on. Sometimes I do. It happens if I'm going through TSA or something, or just there is a time or two I put the socks on wrong, but it's very, very far and few between at this point. But when I'm doing new stuff, yup, gonna fail, gonna mess things up. And for me, and what I try to tell people is that's when you're pushing on that edge of that kind of like growth edge. And that's when you're doing it right.
So when you're on that growth edge, do we maybe, and you might better use you as an example, when you're on that growth edge, do you start to feel something that that's the fear kicking in? But because of the tools that you've got and the research that you've done, you probably know, to you, is that a good thing? And actually, I'm going to move forward because the sensation's there, but this is almost a cue for me to move forward.
Yes. And that's really where the RAIN method comes in. And I am showing you a little card that when I do keynotes and corporate workshops, people get a physical one, but your audience can get a PDF digital download of the same exact card that I'm going to talk about now. Then just going to hellobravenewYou.com. And that's hellobravenewYou.com, because I'm not going to make people try and spell my last name. Like, hey, I know better. It's totally a Harry Potter energy type of name.
I love it. I love it.
It's hard to spell. I try to order pizza on the phone, and I just give them a fake name because no one's got time for that.
And you know what I meant to do? What I meant to do is ask you before we hit the record button, which was my sort of first failure, was to ask you, how do I pronounce your surname? But I forgot.
Yeah, that's okay. Not even worried about it. And that's one of those things too. I try and tell people I am not delicate about the mispronouncement of my last name. I have been called far worse in the past, and I'm sure I will be called far worse in the future. Yeah, I'm a professor and an academic by stock and trade, and have been for about 2 decades. So you bet my students.
Yeah,
Maybe not to my face, but there's lots of different names other than mispronouncing my last one out there for me. So that's totally fine. And I think, again, deciding what is worth your energy and what isn't is a part of that practicing failure that your show is really about. Is about. Right. I choose not to be delicate about how my name's pronounced, because I don't have energy for that, because I only have so much energy and I want to devote it to other stuff that is actually going to make a difference in the world. So I don't care. No, it's totally fine. But kind of like getting back to the RAIN method, that addresses your question about what do you do when those sensations kind of hit, and knowing those sensations is really powerful, because everyone is going to have a physical reaction that's a little bit different. And before I get into those physical reactions, I want to back it up just a little bit. And when we look at fear or stress, we can kind of divide it into two types. And in the literature, if you go into the primary literature, it's called clean and dirty fear, but that feels really problematic for me. And it's easy to mix up which one is which. You're like, wait, am I feeling the clean one or the dirty one? And so in my RAIN method, which is going to be a framework to be able to move through these sensations, the first step is understanding that we have fictional fear and non-fictional fear. So when we think about nonfiction, so just like a book or a periodical, nonfiction is going to be the type of fear that we share in the moment that is happening right now. That if we are in a crowd of people, everyone is going to be sharing that same experience. So let's give an example. We're in a busy restaurant, it's Friday night, and we're having dinner and we're in conversation, and all of a sudden we hear all this glass breaking. Everyone in that restaurant is going to turn and see, like, towards that sound. What is it? Is it something I need to pay attention to? Is it an emergency? Do I need to run away, grab my child and run or something? Or is it someone just broke a glass? And our brains are immediately going to react to the noise. We're going to turn towards it. We're quickly going to process yes or no on the need to do something else. And if it was just a server that dropped some glassware, we're like, oh, okay, well, moving on back to my conversation. So we all shared that experience. All of our brains collectively decided that's nothing that we need to do about it. Now the server needs to do something about it. But in terms of our fear reaction, we're like, okay, just a broken glass. It's not someone, starting a bar fight or something more serious. It's just, okay, I don't need to do anything about it. And because we didn't need to do anything about it, we just go on with our conversation. We don't think about it. Maybe that server thinks about it later on because maybe they're really embarrassed, but no one else does. Everyone else just going on with their life. Or if it was something that we did need to react to, let's say it was a bar fight and that breaking glass was, that classic movie where break a bottle in the bar, like, come at me. And most people don't want to deal with a bar fight between two drunk dudes. It's just nope.
Tend to move away.
Right. Yeah. Like especially as a woman, I'm not dealing with that. And, if it was a lady being possibly harmed, I would step in, even though I'm tiny and am not a ninja, but I would do my best. But and I've been in that situation where I'm like, okay, hope for the best, but I won't leave you. But two equally, matched drunk men, not gonna do. I'm gonna run away. I'm just gonna go the other way, and other people
to it.
Yeah, like you seem like you need to work things out. And if that was the case, then everyone's making that decision in the moment. So that's going to be, example of that non-fictional fear. So in the moment, our brain knows what to do. We don't need to worry about it. But the type of fear or stress that's really insidious is that fictional type of fear. This is the type of fear that we think about that happened in the past, or we are worrying about happening in the future. It's not happening right now. And it could have kind of like a little kernel of truth, just like good stories have a kernel of truth. But it's something that either we continue to tell ourselves stories about, or we have been told stories from our childhood, from our families or communities, loved ones, friends, media. All these stories are coming at us. And if we don't address those things, then they come out in our present. They keep us from going bigger, right? Stretching ourselves or feeling comfortable in our own skin. And when we feel discomfort, whether that's physical and or mental, we don't want to show up. We want to hide in our blanket cave and just not play. We're like, nope, I don't want to. And that is seen in how we show up with our families, our friends, how we show up in our communities or politics or activism or fill in the blank, right? Because if we're just in our little hidey cave, doom scrolling, then it feels safe, but that's not a way to live. So kind of like the first thing is recognizing, what does your body physically do? Like in that example of the, let's say, two dudes in a bar fight, we don't need to decide, oh, am I having a fear arousal? No, you're running the other way. You're not, it's cut and dry. Nope. Yes.
Easy reaction.
Right. I'm afraid of, let's see, switch beats really close. I'm afraid of getting punched by accident. That is a totally acceptable fear. So I'm running away. I'm not going to fight this one. I'm literally running away. But it's the more insidious fictional fears that we need to be looking out for.
Okay.
So that physical tells, like it can be, for me, I'm a shoulder scruncher, right? Like I'm like, like literally shoulder scruncher. I'm a jaw clencher. Those two things, if I'm doing, that's a way for me to know, okay, I need to stop and think about what is going on here. Like, what am I reacting to? And sometimes just recognizing that you are in a fear arousal response. And again, going back to that amygdala, the amygdala is going to be two almond-shaped structures in our brain that, for simple purposes, is our fear center. That amygdala can kind of be on a spectrum of being engaged or fired up, right? It can be kind of mild. It's like hot sauce, right? Mild, medium, really, really hot. When it's really hot, we know that's the dudes in the bar fight. I don't need to wonder if I'm afraid of something that on that spectrum. But in the mild to medium, sometimes you don't know. And so knowing your physical tells can be really powerful. Many people will have kind of like digestive upset, or they'll get clammy hands, or like many different fear responses happen physically, and everyone's just a little bit different. So kind of knowing what your tells are, like in poker, can be a really powerful first step to recognizing when you're on that edge, and then deciding, is this something that I'm safe and I want to push through? Is it something that, yeah, no, this is a bad idea. I shouldn't walk down that aisle, that dark alley at 2 a.m. after having a few drinks. I'm starting to get fear responses. Okay, you know what? I'm just not going to. I'm just going to choose to go somewhere else. Or is it you are having these feelings because you need to assert your boundaries at work and tell them, nope, 5 p.m. I'm done. I'm not answering your email at 9 p.m. You paid me till 5. So thanks, but no. But that can be scary if a senior leader is trying to tell you, okay, about to have some unpaid work. Academia is famous for unpaid work. And so you really have to be like, no, thanks. That's really nice that you thought of me for some free labor. But I'm gonna push back and say no. And that can be scary in that moment.
So is it good for people to become, I guess, for people listening to this now, and for people to become conscious, or maybe become more aware of their fear triggers that they have in their life? Because sometimes we might accept, like the example you've just given, there might be people listening to this who might think, actually, pretty much all this week I've worked late just because I've been asked to. I'm going to see no buffer in my pay packet, but I've just been asked, and it's almost become a reflex for my manager to ask me to work late because of maybe some miscellaneous issues that exist within their team. So is it, and maybe they don't know how to maybe think, you know what, maybe I need to maybe use your card or do something where they can have a marker to know, actually, maybe next time I'm going to say, you know what, I appreciate you thinking of me, but I actually cannot work late tonight.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the power in the RAIN method, even though we only got to R so far for recognize, is because when you start to recognize that sensation, then you can be more present in deciding if it's worth your time and energy, right? Going back to, is it worth the time and energy for me to correct people or get all huffy about mispronouncing of my name, which is no. And if you decide that either the thing is not worth the energy, you'll just do it, it's not worth your personal energy to fight about it, or at least you're making a decision, right? I do stuff I don't want to do all the time. I'm an adult, but at least I try to be present in knowing that, all right, if it's something that a senior leader, and even though I'm a professor, I have senior leadership in academia. Academia loves different levels of, like we have so many different, like organizational levels of who's in charge. And like to this day, they do things that take advantage of people, including myself. And I have to decide, is this worth it? Or is it just like, okay, sometimes you can't fight the system. So I'm going to take it on the nose, but I'm aware of it. However, if there's things that I do want to change and that I don't want to accept, and I'm going to recognize that it's happening and I'm going to take action, in between deciding to take action and then even maybe during taking action can be really scary. Like that gap can be terrifying. And sometimes that fear is exactly what keeps us from changing things, both in our life
Yeah.
and in our world, right? Because they're like, okay, I recognize that I'm being taken advantage of, but it's a lot, or like, what if these things happen, or it feels really icky to like fear feels icky. I don't want to do it. So that's where my methods and my neurohacks are going to come into play. That if you've decided to say yes to move forward, these are going to make it easier. These neurohacks are going to allow you to decrease that icky feeling of just the normal fear responses that are happening in your body, because your amygdala wants you to stay in the blanket cave. Stay safe. Its whole job is to keep you safe. But safety isn't always going to get you where you want to go or to allow you to be the person that you want to be. And if you want to be more anything, more successful, more fit, a better parent, a better human, then you have to be more than you are today. That's the definition of it. And it's can be scary to become, like, even just fitness. If you've never done fitness, if you've never done like a new sport, and it's day one and you go in and you just assume everybody knows what they're doing and that you are not ready, or people are gonna make fun of you, or they're just gonna kick you out because, hey, loser, you don't know how to fill in the blank. That can keep you from some really magical experiences. Maybe you meet your new best friend at that, sport, or
Yeah.
your next partner, or your, whatever. You don't know, but you're definitely not going to meet anyone new in your blanket cave. I mean, I guess in the technology, maybe you could order someone like, hey, meet me. I suppose it's not out of the realm of experience, but it's generally.
Just with technology today. Can I ask you around? So, as people become to embrace fear by using some of the neuro hacks that your people are able to do via your book and via the card. So the card, how's that spelled? Sorry.
Yeah, so this is the RAIN method, just like it rains a lot in
Okay, rain
London.
method. Okay.
So
Okay.
RAIN, and it's going to stand for recognize, assign, identify, and navigate. And the navigate is going to be that last step, but we're having so much fun talking. We're still on the first stage. So I'm going to barrel through. I'm going to stop getting distracted because we want to get that RAIN method all in one go. So step one, recognize. That's going back to those physical tells. And again, for me, jaw clencher, shoulder scruncher. How about you? Do you have kind of physical tells, maybe like dry mouth, clammy hands? What would you say your physical tells are?
Well, when I get fear, hmm, I think it's almost like a shiver if something
Ooh,
happens to me. If something I've got to do, maybe I get an email about something that I maybe know that maybe I needed to engage that situation prior to the email coming, and then
mhm.
when the email arrives in my inbox, as an example, I might get like a shiver.
Yeah, down your spine. You're like, oh no.
Yeah, yeah. Then what do I do? Do I normally engage it? And then clearly at some point I'm going to have to engage it. But definitely avoidance is something that is figured significantly in my life over the years, and eventually gets done. But avoidance definitely, I think, has played a key part of my life, and that shiver does probably happen a couple of times a week,
Yeah. Well, that's good.
unfortunately.
Well, now you're gonna have these neuro hacks. So when you get that shiver, you're like,
Exactly,
"Okay,
exactly.
I know what to do next," right? And that's kind of like the power of it. People ask me many times after, let's say, a keynote, or I'm doing a workshop. Okay, will your work get rid of all my fears? And the answer is no, because you're still human. And it is nearly biologically impossible to remove fear from your life. Because we need fear. You shouldn't go, like play on the freeway. You should be afraid of that because cars kill you if you just like run around on the freeway without clothes on or something like that's you should be afraid of that. Like that's you shouldn't, drink poison. You need some fears.
Yeah.
That's just silly to think you would have zero fear. But what my work will do is be able to allow you to navigate through your normal everyday stresses and fear arousals easier, quicker, and be able to push yourself further because now you have a tool set instead of just being at the whim of that feeling. And then, like you were saying, avoid, right? Go into the blanket cave, that's avoidance. So instead of that, then you can move forward instead of staying where you are or moving backward.
And
And yes, go ahead.
so I was going to say, as we start using the RAIN method, and we become more aware of maybe our fears, our triggers, and essentially maybe we were able to identify what our fears are. As we go through the process, maybe doing this for a year or so, typically do people become more confident dealing with fears? Maybe their fears might migrate. Maybe a fear I've got today may not be the same fear that I have in 12 months' time because I've used the RAIN method and the initial fears that I had, those ones, piece of cake, comfort with them. The other ones actually is a different fear that's kicked in, which might be, you're in Silicon, or you live near Silicon Valley or in Silicon Valley, lots of entrepreneurs, lots of things going on. But as we scale, we get bigger, the challenges and maybe the unknown becomes a little bit bigger. So I don't know whether you can expand on that.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And the things that I'm afraid of aren't going to be exactly the same things that you're afraid of. That it's not going to be the same things as people listening, but we can continue to confront and conquer those fears. One example, let's say, when I first started speaking, publicly, I would say my first bout of public speaking, if you will, was as a grad student. I've taught my very first class. That was a lab. It was 30 people, and it was, it was my first master's degree. So I was just like kind of like a lab instructor, but I was by myself. There was no one else in the room that was in charge except for me. And I had 30 undergrad students that I needed to teach. And it was a 3-hour lab. And I needed to teach. I needed to be a public speaker in that space. And after, everyone left, class was over, and we had these big, huge wood doors that you would completely shut the door after the last student. I straight just laid on the ground. I was so exhausted from trying to be perfect and kind of white knuckling my way through of pretending like I knew what I was talking about and pretending that I was literally the best lab instructor ever to lab instruct, even though it was my first time. I was so physically drained. I had to lay down on the dusty floor of the lab because it was draining because it was scary. And was I fearful that I was going to die? No, I wasn't afraid of my students in that way, but I was afraid of being seen as somebody that was incompetent. I was afraid of being seen as someone that was unintelligent. And I was letting those fears completely control me through those 3 hours. And then when I got on the other side, I was just dead. Fast forward, even just a few years, I was teaching every Monday and Wednesday to a class of 400 on a big stage in Morris Daily Auditorium. Fast forward to now, I've been a professional speaker for 15 years. I've done TED. I'm actually doing TED Next in Atlanta, Georgia, in a couple weeks. And do I still get nervous before these big shows? Yeah, because I care, right? But that's not the same as being terrified or afraid of the things that I was afraid of when I first started speaking publicly in that forum where I was the point person and everyone was looking to me to be the expert. So now I can take that energy and say, all right, I want to do a really good job. And now I can harness that energy to really bring it on stage and share that energy with my audience instead of kind of trying to like push that energy down, and it's going to get out anyway. It's just, that's just what energy does. And I think that's the difference. We can continue to grow and change, but our brains and our bodies are going to continue being what they are. You're not going to change your amygdala.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I was thinking as well around, and we all can maybe do this, is think about things this week. We can all maybe think about things this week. Maybe there might be one or two things that we could have done this week, or maybe even we should have done this week. We wanted to do this week, but maybe fear won the day. And maybe fear stopped us doing that. There could be some people that maybe they had the opportunity to do a speaking talk. It could be at work, it could be at a community event, it could be something or another. But maybe
your friends and family, right? Sometimes we're afraid to bring up a tough subject or ask for something we haven't asked before. It can be big and small, right? That happens in all of our relationships because humans are complicated.
Yeah. So for you, do you recognize that? So if there's something that's come up and maybe it's a little bit different to typically, it might be having a conversation with a colleague at work, and typically I wouldn't have that type of conversation with that particular colleague, but for this particular scenario, feels uncomfortable. But are you able to use your neurohacks and think, you know what, I will have this conversation and we will move forward?
Yeah, since I do this work full time, I feel that I am better at it because it's at the forefront of my mind than I was, let's say, 10 years ago or 15 years ago. But even when I recognize it, sometimes, like tools are only powerful if you use them. And many times our brains, and I'm going to anthropomorphize brains versus kind of like ourselves, because it's easier to talk that way. But sometimes our brains just want to be toddlers, right? They don't want to eat the vegetables. They just want to go back to our old comfortable coping mechanisms. And even when I know, let's say I'm trying to do something that I haven't done before, or something that I'm having to learn, and the first time I do this thing, I have to show it to the world as my first project. You're like, all right. And I can recognize that in that moment, I'm letting fear take the wheel, right? If we think about a bus, and our brain has kind of two opposing mechanisms between fear and courage, the amygdala being the fear center, and our prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain that is going to be the area that allows us to innovate, to problem solve, to plan, to kind of like create and be that part that we really associate who we are and our humanness. They work in opposition of each other. So only one can drive the bus. If fear is driving the bus, the prefrontal cortex takes a backseat. Like it physically shuts down. So you can't be creative, you can't innovate, you can't problem solve when you are in a fear arousal state. That's just how it works. And I can notice that in myself, and still also go back to my old coping mechanisms, because part of my brain is like, I'm tired. I don't want to do the right thing. I don't want to eat the vegetables. And then, other times I will, obviously, like, absolutely use my neurohacks. Like I was talking about rushing from class today to get here to talk to you. I was using those neurohacks. Like I was using the tapping into courage, which we can talk about now, or pinch the valley, which is another one of my favorites. The near and the far, another one of my favorites. And I was using those in the car on the way over here so that I could help take my stressful energy of being afraid of being late, of being afraid of not delivering for you, and take it down a notch. So I could actually deliver what I feel would be a good interview for you and your audience. Yeah, go ahead.
Because what what I was thinking that I took from that, it was a lovely email. And if you hadn't sent the email and you're kind of like rushing around to get to the class and then to get back and you're driving, this, that, and the other, and then you've got to rush in, then you've got to set up. But to me, it's given you control because A, you sent the email, so you communicated and you were able to communicate nicely, but also there's almost the caveat that if I'm running a fraction rate, which we all do periodically because that's the way life is, that we're aware and we're just good. And if there was a problem, and maybe say if there was a problem my end, because you communicated, I could have communicated back and said, actually, there's a slight issue there because of my schedules has changed
Yeah.
slightly as well. So that was a lovely lesson for me.
Oh, good. Yeah. And that's even coming back to the courage to just be authentic and share with people what's happening in your life, what's happening in your thought process, because we're all afraid of being afraid. So many times we just mask to the people in our professional lives, even to the people that we love, to show this perfect veneer. And it's like no one's perfect and not even just like close to perfect. We're so all just human, which means that there are bits that don't work and some of them kind of wonky. Even, when we look at physical parts of ourselves that don't work at optimal levels, like I have a bum left knee, but that's okay to talk about. But we don't talk about, oh, I have these insecurities, or I have these parts of my brain that maybe just don't work as well, but other parts really are awesome. And creating that different conversation and just, having the courage to just throw it out there. I am not perfect. And many, let's say just professors, want their students, they want the world to see them as infallible. Never wrong.
Really, really, even
Oh yeah, like that is the quintessential. And I love academia, but there's a lot of stuff wrong with. I mean, we're such an old institution, and not just the institution I work at, which is the oldest institution of public higher education west of the Mississippi here in the United States, but the systems are so rigid and because they've been around for so long that this idea of the perfect learned professor never being wrong, and I thought that's what I had to be when I first started teaching, that if someone asked me a question, if I didn't know the answer right away, that I was flawed in some way or not good enough to be in the role that I was. And that's preposterous, right? It's just, and then it took me a while to kind of come to the level of courage if I had a question that I didn't know the answer to, is to say like, oh, I love that question. It's such a good question. I actually don't know the answer. That's how good of a question it is. But let's find out together. Like before that, I could just BS people and kind of get them to forget they asked the question if I didn't know the answer, because I thought I had to be perfect. I thought I had to be ChatGPT. And just be able, and this is before ChatGPT. I used to say this joke, but I would use Google. But Google's so
no,
last decade.
it is. It reminds me of I was listening to something by Robert Greene.
No, tell me
He's
more.
the author, did 48 Laws of Powers, of
Mhm.
Power, sorry. Anyway, he talked about something along the lines of, this isn't verbatim, but it's along these lines. It's what you said, it got me thinking of him. So he talked about when you get in that confidence zone, we're kind of able to kind of say maybe things like, I don't know that.
Yeah.
Because when maybe we're not that confident and we don't know, maybe we can be when we're typically when we're younger, we might view it as a sign of vulnerability, saying, actually, I don't know that. And
And weakness, yeah.
yeah,
And it's not, right? Like it's
absolutely.
but it takes courage, it takes bravery, which is a skill. And this is one of the things also I try to tell, everyone that works with me. We get this idea that courage, bravery, the ability to do hard things is something either you're born with or you're not. And it's either you are running into the burning building to save the cat, or you're cowering across the street taking a video. There's only two kinds of people. And the reality is that is not true. Courage is a muscle. It is a muscle that we can train, that we can build, that we can make stronger so that we do live more courageously in our everyday lives, and not just at these kind of pivotal once in a lifetime moments. Because it does take courage to send an email saying, hey, I might be kind of a hot mess before our call, just FYI, instead of pretending that I'm going to show up to everything perfectly. But that's a skill that I continue to build. And sometimes people ask me, oh, well, I mean, you must have no fears. I'm like, no, fearlessness is a lie. It just
really, because
it's totally a lie. Fearlessness is such a lie. Yeah, I know it's good for like a mug, but that's it. It's a total BS lie.
Really,
because you can do something scary, feel the fear, and do it anyway. Not my quote, but a good one. And B, you can get better and not be afraid of things that you once were afraid of, right? But the ability to be fearless, to literally have no fear in life and no fear in the things that you do, is a lie. And it's a really dangerous lie, because then people believe that they are broken when they feel fear, because they maybe assume that everyone else doesn't. And then they feel shame. Then it gets deeper, more ingrained. They're masking more, or just not trying, just not showing up. Because even if they don't necessarily articulate it to themselves or others, when we have this messaging that fearlessness is even possible, especially, younger folks, and being 45, I'm at that age, I'm like, I can start to say younger folks. And I have to watch my examples. I'm like, oh no, is that going to be totally not even funny anymore? Because it's so dated. But when the only tools that we give people to navigate through the normal everyday fears is be fearless, super unhelpful. What am I supposed to do with that? But speaking of tools, we've had such a good conversation. We never got through the brain method, but it's okay, because I do a tutorial on the hellobravenowyou.com. There's a full tutorial and the actual physical card that, well, it's not physical because it's a digital download, but the actual card that you can download as a PDF. But I want to give your listeners some quick neuro hacks that they can take away before we round out our hour today. So I'm going to start with the one, and on the hellobravenowyou.com, there's also, so I have a neurohacking card deck. There are going to be quick wins, because of course there's going to be neurohacks in the book, Brave New You, but a book is not necessarily everyone's cup of tea. I'm a bibliophile, right? I don't think you can write a book and hate books, but not everyone is. And that's okay. It's, that is just how things are. But I do want my work to still be accessible to people. So if people are more into like a card deck, which I love, or if you're in a lot of pain, maybe you're not ready for a book, right? Maybe you come to the book later. So these cards, a few of them are also available at hellobravenowyou.com. So this is the one I'll start with, that we did. Actually, I'll do this one that I did in the car, not while driving, but at the stop sign. And for those just listening, so this tool is going to be called the near and the far. And for those listening, you can use this, you can use a pen, or you can just use your finger. So I use my index finger to kind of make a fist, but point the index finger up to the sky. And I'm going to take my glasses off, because it's kind of just weird with my glasses on. So I'm going to take my index finger that's pointed up to the sky, and I'm going to point it and touch my nose with it. And using both of my eyes, I'm going to focus my best on that finger, and I'm going to slowly take that finger away from my face, and it's going to make two. It's all fuzzy, and that's fine until it becomes one. And then I'm going to slowly bring that finger back to my nose. It's starting to go two, it's starting to go one, and it's kind of fuzzy, and that's okay until it touches my nose. And I'm just going to do this a couple times. And what we're doing right now is we are activating the vagus nerve, which is going to be the longest cranial nerve in the body. And in addition to that, it is a powerful way to signal to your amygdala that you are okay, that things are calm and safe. Because if you're running from a bear, you can't really be doing this with your finger. Right? You're focused on other stuff. And
Don't do that if you're running from a bear.
right? Yeah, you're like, hold on, wait, I'm running from a bear. So if there's other dangerous things, you're not going to be focused on doing that. There's a larger kind of explanation, but we don't really have time for it. But
So
just
is that centering on us then? Is that taking away the focus of whatever the fear was?
oh, it's actually just it's a physical thing, right? So my field of study is biopsychology, which is going to be a multi-interdisciplinary study, um, bringing both biology, the like physical aspects of our human body, with the psychology, the way that we experience the world, the way that we think, and many people, I would say like most people in either biology or psychology feel, and it's a very traditional viewpoint, that those are very separate aspects. They're a separate department in every university I've seen. From the literature to most people are going to just focus their study on biology only or psychology only.
Okay.
Within traditional biology, which is one of, when universities were created for sciences, you had physics, chemistry, and then biology was kind of a newcomer. And even today, you talk to people that are going to be in chemistry or physics, and they call biology the soft science, like it's not a real science. Because studying living organisms isn't chemistry or physics. That's the real science. And then all three of them think psychology is totally not a real science. And we don't need to get, that's a whole nother podcast. But for me, I'm about human optimization. And you can't have optimization without bringing both the physicality, like the way that your brain works, the way that your body works, into the way that your mind works and perceives things and thinks about yourself and the world. And so some of my neurohacks are going to be physical. So the near and the far is kind of a physical reset. You're using your eye focus to go. So when you're in a fear response, generally we're gonna have like a narrow field of view. When we're relaxed, we have a wider field of view. So it's a physical forcing. Yes, it could take your mind off of things, but really that's more of a physical neurohack.
Okay.
There's more kind of mind psychology based ones that are available, but it's that kind of mix, right? Because we're a whole being. We have both. And it's some things you can just study the physical nature of them. But when you're talking about something so complex as how we move through our world and experience fear or stress, it's more complex than one or the other.
Yeah, no, it sounds it. I love the way that you've blended biology and psychology together. And what I'm also thinking as well, and I'm mindful of time, so I'll let you go in a second, is that if we don't engage with some of the tools that you've mentioned, and obviously people should get your book, is that we probably risk living within, like, massively within ourselves, because where fear is going to dominate.
Yeah. And it's really about choices. Many people will go through like their entire life and never self-reflect, never decide that they want a bigger or different life than the one that they have. But if you are somebody that wants something bigger, something different, something new for yourself or for the people that you love or for your community, then to get to that new spot, you have to navigate through some choppy waters sometimes. And that's going to be scary. I use a lot of kind of like metaphors and analogy around travel, because travel is one of the greatest, like kind of like not the greatest, but like one of the joys of my life, something that I didn't have access to as a young person, that really I was able to come to travel in my late 20s. And for me, when I first started traveling, a lot of it was just by myself internationally. And for an American, that's really unusual. Not for other, let's say, like Brits or Aussies, that's kind of more normalized. But for Americans, most Americans don't even have a passport. And so to internationally travel as a woman alone, super weird. Everyone's like, what? What are you doing? Aren't you going to die as soon as you leave the US? Like, no, it's fine. It'll be okay. But there was, a lot of fears that I had to navigate through, and traveling taught me how to do that and to be okay not knowing the language and muddling through trying to order food and being afraid that I was going to get something weird and then getting something weird and it's still okay, like didn't die. I remember I was in Germany once and didn't know anything on the menu and decided to be, brave. And I was just like, oh, bring me your favorite thing. And got this massive plate of lamb shanks, like huge, like two.
I love lamb shanks.
Oh, really? But it was massive. Like had like the bone in, and it was the size of my head. I was like, what am I gonna do with this? But I normally would have never ordered lamb shanks. You should have been there with me. So
I wish I was there. I'm thinking I wish I was there. Next time you go to Germany, can you let me know? I'll meet you then.
You do, right? And then you can be like, hey, you take those, I'll take yours. And kind of, and it's a practice, right? Just like you can't do one squat and have a really nice butt. You have to do many squats to get the nice butt. That's just how it is. And so practicing in these small ways allow you to have courage when the big stuff shows up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. You know what's exciting about this as well is that everybody listening can think of areas in their lives where fear does dominate. And if you could almost draw sort of a line from when you start to all the different fears that you are able to tick off, and the growth potential just in terms of where your life was, where we were emotionally, and everything. The growth, using these tools can be crazy.
Yeah, it's going to accelerate and it's going to make things easier. And I use the because if it's something new and something worth it, it's not going to be easy, because if it was just super easy, then it's probably not going to get you where you want to go.
Yeah.
Right. But it can be easier. And
I like that.
Yeah, because people just hear the easy part and then they just stop listening. They're like, yeah. And then I think it was an Amazon review. I don't remember what it was. And I try not to read those, but it was some review. I don't remember where it was when the book first came out. And it was a poor review. And the person that had posted it read this whole book. My life is still the same. Okay. Well, I mean, you have to do stuff. You can't.
Exactly.
Like, did you think a single book, just reading it, was going to magically just transform your life? Would it be nice? I could just buy a $15 book and be like, boom. It's just like, I was like, it works. And so, and that would be great if it did. If we had like little magic wands to poof, and then we didn't have to, we could get whatever we wanted, like the magic genie bottle, right? You just like 3 wishes, but that's not how life works. But these tools will make it easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So Brave New You, I'm imagining that people should get the book, and a lot of this they're going to learn in the book.
Yes, and even though I'm American, obviously it is for sale in the UK. So definitely check it out, and it's both in hardback as well as audiobook, and I narrate the audiobook. That was another kind of navigation of fear of being in the studio. I've never narrated a book before, and we were in like the person that had been in the studio before me. I didn't get to meet her. Was Jane Fonda.
Wow.
So it was like a proper studio, and narration's a whole other skill set. And I was
Really?
a coach, and because I talk fast and I have a lot of mannerisms that you don't want in a narration. You have to say it word for word in the book. And I think that you're allowed something like 10 words different than the manuscript. Otherwise, audiobook platforms will reject it. because it's not a reflection of the book. So you have to be word for word, like almost to the money. And I worked with one of the world's largest publishers, Hachette, and it was something that I didn't really think was on my dance card before, but it was so fun and a lot of growth. And if I had let my own fear of not ever narrating a book, because they would have just hired an actress. I actually had to audition. I had to audition to narrate my own book.
Really? So is that a requirement is that a
Yeah,
requirement for the publisher?
yeah, for Hachette. I don't know about other publishers, but for Hachette, because they didn't want, because their money is behind it.
And so they know what works.
Yeah, so I had to audition to narrate my own book, and if I didn't make the cut, then they would have just hired a professional voice actress to do it. But I really wanted it's my stories, it's my tools. I wanted people to hear my voice. So in order to get ready for that audition, I worked with a voice coach that was specific to narration, and it like practiced a lot before I got in the studio. And it's not like I didn't know what was in the book, but it was having to move through those sensations of not being good enough or not being in control. I'm not a stranger to production, but a lot of my production has been where I had more control over the process. But now I was in a studio with a director and like a sound designer and all these people watching me read a book and having to, like I wanted to really get it without having a lot of retakes, and because that's a time waste, and they were long production days. We had 8-hour production days.
How many days? How long
Oh
did it take, the
man,
process?
we did 4.
4 days.
So yeah, 4 days. Most of them, like the first day was supposed to be 8 hours. I couldn't do it. I got to 6 and my face hurt like so much. I was like, I can't. Part of that, because again, I'm a jaw clencher, that I was letting that fearfulness come out of my face. And then I was able to, again, with practice, by day 2 got to 7 hours, day 3 and 4 we did a full 8. And looking back, so glad I did it. It was hard in the doing, but worth it, because I came out of the other side stronger. I'm not going to become a professional book narrator. That's not a passion of mine. Like it's, I love audiobooks myself. So, there's people that do that professionally as their full-time job. That's not what I wanted to do. But I did want to show up for this and learn a new skill and stretch my production and my delivery in a different way. And because I wanted to do that, I had to deal with my fear stuff so I could be present and deliver that thing I said I wanted to deliver.
It almost feels that it's part of the book, Brave New You. It's almost part of the journey to do something
Yeah.
for the book that you haven't done before. And it's sort of entwined into the theme of fear. And I love the title Brave New You, because we all want to, we all have dreams and aspirations. Some of the smaller ones which don't really take much effort that we can do, but it's the bigger ones that can really transform our lives, where the fear is totally dominant. And those are the ones that we can easily just think that's not going to happen. And also something that I've been watching and listening to your content and reading stuff as well. And I think we talk about, obviously sometimes we can be influenced by other people
Oh yeah,
who
absolutely.
who essentially don't have this, maybe they're more fearful than us. So
Mhm.
when we're trying to do something which is going to elevate us, if we're around people that potentially live in that fear themselves, they will invariably, based on their own fear, poo-poo maybe things that we want to do.
Oh, absolutely. I talk about my mom and some of my upbringing in the book, and what drew me to wanting to kind of like study fear as an academic endeavor was because I was raised in a very fear-laden household. I didn't know that when I was a kid at the time, because you don't have the words for these things when you're a child. You don't really understand them. You can't articulate them until you're looking back. But my mom absolutely lived in fear of all these things. And so when I started to want to just become something more, that was really scary for her. And for her, it came out as wanting to continue to control even more, control through, emotional manipulation, or, any way, shape, and form that she could try and keep me small. And if I could have stayed a 5-year-old forever, that would have been her big desire. But obviously I couldn't. And even as an adult, if I still just stayed small so that she could have control over me, that would have been her greatest wish. But that wasn't my greatest wish. And it's usually not most, children's greatest wish. They want to do other stuff. Everyone has dreams and desires. And if I would have let her fear shape my life, I would be a completely different person. I would have never been able to go and live in London and go to Imperial College London, or do all of the things that I've been so lucky to be able to do in my life. And making that decision was not easy. It was a long process. And not to like come to like a morbid end or kind of thing, but honestly, her passing away in 2014 allowed me to have exponential growth, because I didn't have to try and fight against her fear. And I wasn't a person that was just going to walk away from a toxic parent. At that time, it wasn't really even a conversation in the public of like walking away from a toxic parent. I feel it's more of a conversation now. But in 2014, it wasn't really a thing. And you just put up with your family. You have to. And my life would be very different if I continued to have to kind of fight uphill against her fears and try to create this bigger life for myself.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective, because I think we all can. Because when you were talking, I was thinking, like throughout this conversation, I'm thinking of people, maybe you're married, your spouse, and you're coming home with the things, or maybe you've got an email about a course you want to do. I was talking to somebody recently who wants to become a lecturer, and probably she should speak to you because you're a lecturer. But she wants to become a lecturer, but she was say, but like in her scenario, it's difficult because she's got family that are kind of, well, do you have time? We've got family, so she's got to. She desperately wants to do it. It's like part of her dream. It's
Yeah.
part of her life. So she just doesn't have to deal with fear. She has to deal with maybe definitely not getting the support. So, so yes, it's difficult.
Yeah. And really common. And again, it's coming back to that decision making framework for yourself. Is it worth it to you? And what are you willing to sacrifice to get it? And sometimes, myself included, the life I could see for myself also included not staying with my husband, who we had been together for 12 years, because he wanted to stay exactly who he was when we met. I was 18 when we met, and I was a very different person 12 years later. But he wanted to stay who we were, in our early 20s, and I didn't. And it didn't make him a bad person. It didn't, like, there was no other things different other than I wanted a different life, and he didn't. And that was something that I was willing to sacrifice, because I personally had sacrificed so much to live in the idea of what my mom wanted for me to be, that I wasn't willing to sacrifice again. And sometimes, I mean, that seems harsh, but it depends how big it is, right? How we only have one life. We don't know how many years any of us have in our experience in this mortal kind of like body. And if on your last day you look back on your life, we're all going to have regrets. People are like, I don't live with regrets. Okay, cool. Then you're not human. Like, there's going to be things that looking back, oh, I should have turned left when I turned right. Or, oh, I should have invested in Apple in 1981. Like, right? Or
We
I
all
should
regret that
invested,
one.
I know, right? I should have invested in Amazon in 1992. Yeah. I know. We like got it. But the big stuff, if looking back, can you say I did the best with what I had at the time and I was true to myself? I had the courage, I had the bravery to be true to who I was and what I wanted out of my life as much as I possibly could. And I try to use that as a North Star. And I hope, I hope that last day is not today, but I hope that last day for me is I'm able to say, yes, I didn't do it right. I didn't do it perfect, but I tried to stay true to who I knew I could be.
Yeah, so it's very inspirational because I think if you adopt and think about what our fears are and then lean into those, because I think deep down, probably we do know that a lot of the fears that we have can give us the life that we want. And when we live within those fears, clearly the life that we want will always be this mirage that we believe isn't accessible because we're not addressing the fears. So I definitely encourage everybody to get the book, and I would leave a link in the show notes. I'm conscious of your time.
Yes. And this has been so fun. I mean, I feel like we could talk for hours, but we didn't get to the many neuro hacks that are available both in the book and in the card deck. But people can go to hellobravenewYou.com and be able to get all the things, including the RAIN method that we just kept having too much fun to get to.
Exactly. Well, it's all there available for people to download, access, and get the book, etc., etc. And the best place to contact you.
Yeah, so if you just go to that hellobravenewYou.com, it'll actually reroute to my website, which is marypoffenroth.com. Again, I just don't force people to spell my name online. So it has all the ways to find me on social channels as well as contact me. So everything that you need is all in one place.
Lovely, lovely. And last question, I need to know your three inspirational people for dinner. So if you can invite three inspirational people for dinner,
Yes.
who might they be?
Yes, so definitely Jane Goodall, who just recently passed.
Yeah.
And I had the honor of actually meeting her,
Oh, wow.
and like talking with her a bit. It was quite a few years ago when I was in more traditional biology, uh, and just she had this just presence that was just quiet power. Like she didn't have
Impactful.
to, she didn't have to yell. She didn't have to. She just walked in the room and just radiated this immense, quiet, intense power. That's all the way I can describe it. So I was really, she signed, I still have one of the books that she signed for me, and that was really an honor. So I didn't have dinner with her, but that was a
So
huge
you
honor.
met her.
Yeah, and I met her, and so it's a great loss for the world to just lose somebody so, and also trailblazing, right? Talking about a woman doing something that you weren't allowed to do at the time, or
She would love your book.
right? Yeah, I'm sure she could write a much better book on it, of just her life, right? Like she lived it in such a way that definitely an inspiration of living bravely from the get go, right? I feel that some of us have more learning to do, myself included, on that bravery trail. And then some people like Jane Goodall just come out of the womb, just swinging, just knowing how to run off to the jungle by yourself without any training and change the world of, primate studies. So
Yeah, 'cause she got a PhD. There was something on the radio about her today. She got a PhD without doing something formally. Forgive me, my memory clearly is challenged, but she did it the non-traditional way by getting the academia, and which was phenomenal.
yeah. And she started, not to go too much down the rabbit hole, but when she her first trip to Africa, she didn't have formal education in that way. Also, that wasn't popular. She went kind of as, my understanding, again, it's been a while since I've read her books, was as like an assistant, and to rise to those levels is just, like a really huge inspiration for me. Then I would say another person would be David Bowie. I like his music, but I wouldn't say it's just his music. I think that just his thought process around how you create media and continue to have something to say all the way up until his death. I mean, he was very passionate about, creating constantly. And even when he was diagnosed with, I think it was like terminal cancer, and he kind of even made a joke out of his last album around, his death, like, because he always wanted to just have something to say, create, and he did it, the thing that he loved until the end. And I think he'd be a really interesting person to talk to. And this one's going to be super random. And I think that she would be overly intense, but also I'm always fascinated by women who did stuff that they were told that they couldn't do or weren't allowed to do, and they did it anyway, and they did it really, really well. So Catherine de Medici, a very kind of like historical figure, so not really a modern figure, but being able to take the helm of France, being, a de Medici from the Italian de Medicis, of having a lot of concentrated power, but being a woman and being able to manipulate, navigate, kind of create all these systems in a time where most women couldn't read, didn't have any power, I think is really inspirational. Some questionable, practices, because this is hundreds of years ago, but just the idea of creating a space for yourself and creating a position that you crafted that didn't exist. And most often, until you were in that position, people told you weren't allowed to be there, is really fascinating for me.
And who was she, sorry?
So Catherine de Medici, again, I'm not like a huge historian around it, but so the de Medici family of like Italy, I want to say like, I'm not a historian, I'm terrible at dates, like the 1400s. And so she became the Queen of France by marrying the King of France. The King of France died, and his like son was too young to actually, be a king because he's a child. And so she became kind of queen regent, and, had this like huge power structure, both within kind of like the French court, and kept like the country of France together, and, surrounded by male politicians. But, she was like the powerhouse and the one in power. She wasn't just like a figurehead. And again, like, in that, I want to say 1400s, I could be totally wrong, but around that time, like a really long time ago.
A long time ago.
Yeah, right. Any historians are going to be like, oh my gosh, totally. It was the 1300s or the 1500s.
Chat GPT if they want to know the exact date.
Oh, it was not recent, but historical figure, and just the ability to navigate very traditional male spaces in her own way, I think.
Trailblazer.
Yeah, exactly.
Trailblazer. Mary, wow, I definitely talk to you for ages, because I love what you're doing. I love your energy. And I think the subject is so inspirational, because the potential that we all potentially are missing out on by not embracing our fear is kind of, sad isn't the right word. I can't think of a good word, but the positives for me are the optics, the opportunity are massive. If we embrace our fear and we tap into those areas, the potential for us all to live a life that we really want to lead, and where we get, I imagine, a lot more fulfillment personally, and I'm sure people around us will radiate from that, is phenomenal.
Yeah, and die with really good stories, because you get good stories when you try and sometimes fail.
Yeah, this could be the watershed moment for everybody that's listening to this. So yeah, so
I hope so.
It'll be lovely to capture what areas people start with, so they can contact you and let you know.
Yeah, that would be beautiful.
Wow, Mary, a lovely meeting you.
It's such a pleasure.
Love what you're doing, and hopefully we can, when you write your next book, hopefully we can have another conversation.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning into this episode of My Perfect Failure. We're always looking to grow the show, So we're keen to hear about the things you like and equally the things you don't like. So you can find me at Paul at myperfectfailure.com, or you can find me via the feedback page on the website. So take care for now. Bye.
Thanks for listening to My Perfect Failure podcast. Be sure to visit www.myperfectfailure.com to join the conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Look out for our next episode.